Hi everyone and welcome to this week's video. So this bike is gorgeous, that's all you can say about this one. The customer brought it in, he wanted us to mount the front tyre and wax the chain. But sort of I think as a sort of a passing thing, can you just service it as well? And this is a real lesson in why you should have a Bikespeeds service. The brakes were not quite aligned correctly and there was one or two other things which we soon realised. Now look how much this torque wrench turns here on the stem bolts. You know, they're going around a good half a turn. They were almost loose. If you'd swerved to swing this bike from one side to another, your handlebars would have gone one way and the chances are the wheel wouldn't have turned. It was really dangerous, and this is a real lesson in doesn't matter how beautiful your bike is, it needs servicing. Look again on this saddle seat post clamp turning, the saddle clamps turning. So then we got on to the main event, which was to wax the chain. We measured the chain to make sure it wasn't too stretched for waxing, and off come the chain here, and we put the chain straight into the degreaser. You always need to clean the entire drivetrain when you're waxing a chain. So off comes the cassette and we stick that in the old degreaser, and then we had these tyres to put on, so off came the original. Always match up the logo with the valve, that's sort of good practice. Check rotation of the new tyre that you're fitting on, and it is possible to do these without levers the majority of the time, although one of my friends did point out this week about a specific tyre and wheel set that would be impossible. We had a little chuckle about that. But first of all, I get it on one side, begin to feather it around with your hands, just kneel on the tyre, not the rim. You can see I'm just nipping that tyre there, start feathering it around and you bring it into the centre of the wheel and they pop on quite easily, more often than not without levers. Give them a little inflation. Now this bike was spotless, but none the more for that, we wet ragged it down. So this orange microfiber towel here is just damp. You know, there was sort of brake dust and that sort of thing on the bike, so we give that a little wipe round, and then we change to dry microfiber towel here from the orange to the purple and just give that a dry off. We took off the chain set because we wanted to degrease it. Also now enables us to get parts like this on the inside and around that bottom bracket area, give that all a good clean up. Now we used chain cleaner on this because this bike, like we say, was actually pretty close, you know, it was almost on the mark, so we just used that to degrease it rather than the solid degreaser. The chain cleaner evaporates quickly, so it's a nice way of getting this clean without really stripping it right down. So we're just giving that a nice clean now. And then the derailleur jockey wheels, again you can see the rest of that derailleur is spotless, so whoever owns this bike keeps it really nice. A worthy bike for a worthy owner. Now the derailleur cable there was a little bit long, it was just tapping on the derailleur arm there, so the swing arm, so we just shortened that off. And then we're just giving this chain set a little clean up and really working in the areas that you can't always do when it's on the bike. Sometimes I would strip these right down, you know, break it down into components and get it degreased, but this bike just didn't need it. It was spotless. So we're giving that a final wipe down. That goes back on now. You can see how clean this comes up. You know, it's an area you couldn't do on the bike, so it just brings it up nicely. And that goes back on. We torque all that up to correct specs. The pre-tensioner there just to get the tension on the bearings correct, and then go the arms. Torque everything up, and yeah, this I would have liked to have ridden this bike. I never ride customers bikes unless I can avoid it, but this one was lovely. So the chain comes out now and we start to dry everything off. This is a little bit of a sort of process in itself. So we've actually had a really good week on the channel this week. We've had some good growth. We were mentioned on a website and they gave a little review to one of our videos, and we saw our subscribers soar this week, so we're thanking all new subscribers this week. So if you are new to the channel, thanks very much for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed already, do subscribe, and you know, always share our posts on your own social medias because it helps us grow, and we're like I say, we're over the moon with the growth this week. It's been the fastest growth rate we've seen so far. So the chain goes in the wax now. This is molten speed wax, and you can see the bubbles there. That was like the air and any water that's left in there foaming out. The wax really gets inside that chain. And then we just blow off the cassette here just to really dry it off and make sure it's nice and ready for molten speed powder, which is something we always do with the cassettes and chains. And we dry everything off and get it all nice before we do each of these processes. So this is molten speed powder, this is molten speed wax, sort of final coating, I suppose you'd describe it as. It's supposed to be worth a few watts. Just gives a nice finish to everything and helps that chain really change gear nicely. And then on goes the ring there, the lock ring, which is also torqued up. So as we've mentioned in previous videos, we like to torque everything and it just gets the bike absolutely perfect. On goes that wheel. This is always the satisfying part, the breaking down of the chain. It sort of goes hard when it's initially waxed, and as you break it down the wax softens and it becomes nice on the bike. So we go on. We always try and avoid, if we can, touching that chain stay with the chain too much, but inevitably you get a little bit of sag. The molten speed powder certainly leaves a coating on everything, so you have to just give that a wipe off afterwards. That's the reason why we're always wearing gloves doing this. And then we just check the gear change and make sure everything's indexed correctly. A little tweak on the thumb adjuster there. And, I mean, this is cross chaining now, but you'd never do that under normal riding circumstances, but make sure it changes through every available gear. And on goes the wheel. You can see I was looking up there at the brakes. That's to sort of begin to weigh up the alignment. And the brakes were just touching one side slightly more than the other, so we adjust the sort of the pull. Then we centralise the brake and make sure that as it pulls the wheel doesn't twist one way or the other, so that the pull is exactly the same. So I get one brake that I feel is where I want it. I measure that, and then obviously we adjust the second brake pull to match the one that we're comfortable with. So in this case we were adjusting the rear and we were happy with the front. So we just use the little thumb adjuster there to get the gap between both brakes identical, so that they pull and feel the same. And we noticed a couple of little marks on the head tube there, and these little rings were actually on the brake guides. We were able to move those along. And we're just finishing off the wheels now, and there we go, ready to ride. And certainly just with that headset alone needed this service.